begin the readout tonight with the disturbing and dangerous saga of John Eastman, who is the expected target of an upcoming subpoena from the committee investigating January 6th. The Trump lawyer who famously authored a blueprint to steal the election has now blown his cover, revealing himself as a treacherous charlatan and an ongoing threat to democracy. At the heart of his story is the Eastman memo, revealed to the public last month and which showed how close this country came to a coup. Drafted in the days before January 6th, it outlined a step-by-step plan for Vice President Mike Pence to nullify the electoral votes from up to 7 states. It was a secret and likely illegal plot to overthrow Joe Biden's presidency before he was even sworn in. Then last week, we saw Eastman suddenly disavow his memo and declare that the plan he outlined was just a wacky, harebrained idea, that he didn't really mean it. In an interview with the National Review, the architect of the coup memo said having Pence reject electoral votes was not viable and would have been crazy to pursue. However, Eastman has now undercut his little charade by candidly revealing that he was fully committed to the ideas expressed in his memo. And he says it would have succeeded, too, had it not been for that pesky Mike Pence. He willingly admits this in a series of undercover videos filmed on Saturday by advocacy journalist Lauren Windsor at an event for the Claremont Institute, the right-wing think tank where Eastman works. Windsor approached Eastman and identified herself as a Trump supporter who had taken part in the insurrection. And here's what he said in a portion of her video that we have edited down.
But I read your memo, and I thought it was solid in all of its legal arguments.
Yeah.
And I was floored that Mike Pence didn't do anything. I mean, why didn't he act on it? Because you gave him the legal reasoning to do that.
I know.
All of your legal reasoning is totally solid.
Yeah, there's no question. But
I mean, like, you know, this supporter to supporter, like, why do you think that Mike Pence didn't do it?
Well, because Mike Pence is an establishment guy at the end of the day.
In that same conversation, Eastman confirmed to Windsor and her colleague that it was indeed Trump's intention to accompany the mob to the Capitol. And the only reason he didn't was because the violence there had already begun. He also appears to speak in solidarity with the right-wing militias that led the siege, baselessly claiming that the FBI set them up.
Do you think if Trump came down on the 6th, it would have changed things, change the calculus a little bit?
If he came down?
Yeah, he said he was coming down.
Oh, down to the Capitol? Yeah, I don't know. Because the breaking of the windows stuff had already started before his speech was over. And if he got down there, then all of that would have been blamed on him. I mean, they're still blaming it him, but they would have had more basis for it. So.
But he'd been planning on coming down, though.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah. Look, the whole thing was a setup. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys had not just kind of wallflowers sitting on the side of the organization, but people instigating within the association FBI plans. It was a setup, and unfortunately, our guys walked into the trap.
But so he would have gone down there if it hadn't been for the violence.
Yeah.
Our guys. Now, in a portion of that video just released minutes ago, Eastman attacks the state election officials who upheld the integrity of the vote in 2020. He ominously says that they should be taken out by primary challengers who embrace the big lie. And he suggests that the big lie should be the platform for Republican candidates in 2022 and in 2024.
If we could have got the decertification, we would have had Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona back in January. Trump, Giuliani, and me met with 300 legislators on January 2nd via Zoom conference call. And they all spinelessly wouldn't do anything. Right? Even though we'd given them all the evidence, they wouldn't do it. So, look, I very much wish it were otherwise. But these guys are spineless. And now, if we take a bunch of them out in the primaries in 2022, and the precondition for getting elected is we're going to fight this stuff, then maybe we got an opportunity.
Joining me now is Lauren Windsor, executive producer of The Undercurrent and Project Veritas Exposed. Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. Really quick question. Were you surprised at how open John Eastman was in admitting that he really did mean it when he put what was in that memo, that he really intended it to be done, given the fact that he's denied that to the National Review?
Yes, I was very surprised. I expected him to be a little bit more shell-shocked, honestly, just because of the incoming flack he described himself in one of the first videos we released.
Let's talk about whether or not this was just John Eastman sort of reminiscing about what he tried to do or planning something else. At the end of that video we just showed, he talked about the way that he hopes the elections go in 2022 to put in place people who'll be willing to use the big lie, I guess essentially use his playbook. Did it come across to you that this was planning or just reminiscing?
Well, he talks about, doing a lot of work in the states with state legislators. And in a separate video that we released today with the president of the Claremont Institute, Ryan Williams, he also talks about Eastman working with state legislators in the states on, quote unquote, election integrity stuff. I very much see this as an ongoing, attempt to subvert future elections.
Well, let me play that. You mentioned John Eastman, who's the president of the Claremont Institute. Let's play that clip.
I didn't mention it, but he's still very involved with a lot of the state legislators and advising them on election integrity stuff. So.
This is the fight, though. I mean, what happens in 2024 when, they seal the election again?
No, a lot of our friends say at FedSoc or wherever else, they say, guys, we just need to move on, look forward. And John's point has always been, look, unless we get right what happened in 2020, there's no moving on. They're just going to steal every subsequent election.
And we're playing a portion of the video that you got from John Eastman. Did he get into any more detail about what John Eastman or what the Claremont Institute might be doing actively in terms of working to implement that plan, to get people who believe in the big lie in place politically for 2022 and 2024?
Well, so that last clip, just to clarify, is Ryan Williams, but it was a very brief conversation because at that point we had not yet found Mr. Eastman. And so we had more of an opportunity to speak with him. I would have tried to delve into that more, but we just didn't have the time to do that.
Okay. Well, Lauren Windsor, thank you very much. Very interesting finds there talking to these two men. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. With me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He serves on the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack. There is now a subpoena out for Mr. Eastman. Has there been any response from his attorneys?
I can't comment on what engagement we've had with him, but I can tell you we're very interested in his testimony. He is obviously at the center of efforts to overturn the election. And listening to that audio and watching that video is just shocking, particularly after earlier he tried to disavow his own memo. But clearly, he was trying to get the vice president to overturn the election, as you say, a coup. And these are insurrectionists, in my view, wearing suits and ties. And they're not done. They're out there trying to strip independent elections officials of their duties or their jobs. So they can set up a more successful effort to overturn the election in the future. And, this is how democracies come to an end, when the very tools of democracy are used against democracy itself.
Now, what do you make of the fact that you have the Claremont Institute sort of putting kind of the sort of faux intellectual backing behind the big lie? Somebody like John Eastman, who, as you said, tried to disavow this memo, but now seems very much committed to the plan that was laid out in it. He's got this institute that is equally committed to it, and they happen to also be doing things like using fake outrage over supposed critical race theory, which isn't critical race theory, and ginning up real racial discord among, to be blunt, white Americans in order to make this all happen. It starts to feel like it's all of a piece. I wonder if it does to you.
It absolutely feels like it's all of a piece. We had an open hearing today with the leaders of the intelligence community on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the intelligence community. And I don't know that we had more than a single question from the GOP side of the aisle about any of the subject of the hearing. And indeed, there was resentment that we were even having a hearing on this, like it was some distraction from the aims of the intelligence community, rather than something that's important to strengthening the community. But as you say, seeing, the Claremont Institute, seeing these institutes giving some kind of intellectual cover to what is just a scandalous effort to turn America into some kind of an autocracy. The Republican Party and its infrastructure, like that institute, are now an anti-truth, anti-democratic cult of the former president. And who would have imagined that such a thing could happen in this country?
Yeah, let me let you listen to a little bit of Merrick Garland. He testified today. This is him being questioned by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse on the investigation and the money behind the January 6th rally. Take a listen, please.
I'm very limited as to what I can say.
I understand that.
We have a criminal investigation going forward.
Please tell me it has not been constrained only to people in the Capitol.
The investigation is being conducted by the prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office and by the FBI field office. We have not constrained them in any way.
Great. And the old doctrine of follow the money, which is a well-established principle of prosecution, is
fair to
alive and well.
It's fair to say that all investigative techniques of which you're familiar, and some maybe that you're not familiar with because they postdate your time, are all being pursued in this matter.
You've expressed some skepticism that Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice have been aggressive enough or intend to be aggressive enough in getting to the bottom of this slow-rolling coup that clearly is not over. Do you have more or less confidence the more that you hear him give testimony?
Well, I'm confident that they're going after those who organized or participated in that attack on the Capitol. Where I am concerned is I don't see any action, and maybe they're just doing a really good job of keeping it confidential, but concerning the former president's efforts to overturn the election in Georgia and perhaps elsewhere. The fact that he's on tape trying to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to find 11,780 votes that don't exist. I think if you or I or any of my constituents were trying to subvert an election that way, trying to defraud people that way and trying to get someone to join a conspiracy to do it, they would be under investigation, if not indictment by now. So I am concerned about that.
Yeah. And another concern here, if you put together what the Claremont Institute is doing in pushing people, particularly white Republicans, to say that the election was invalidated by the votes in particularly brown and black communities. They feel that those votes were fraudulent. You add that to what the same organization, the Claremont Institute, is doing around this fake version of critical race theory to also gin up racial animus that is directed at education. And then listen to this. Charlie Kirk, who is an activist on the right, he had an event for his group, Turning Point USA, another pro-Trump organization. And I want you to listen to one person said at that event, and this was in Idaho.
This is tyranny. When do we get to use the guns? No, and I'm not, that's not a joke. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, literally, where's the line? How many elections are they going to steal before we kill these people?
So, no, no, hold on. No, stop. Hold on. Now, I'm going to denounce that. I'm going to tell you why. Because you're playing into all their plans, and they're trying to make you do this.
And people like Charlie Kirk have, clearly lost control of the mob that they've helped to create, to the point now that there's a poll, Politico poll here, 60% of Republicans now, 60% of Republicans believe that the 2020 election results should be overturned. And you have people openly talking about violence in order to ensure that they maintain control of this country regardless of election results. What is your alarm level at this point, 1 to 10? Because it feels like we're getting pretty close to 10.
Oh, I think it's at a 10. There has been a sustained effort before the election, during the election, and after the election to this day to discredit the whole idea that we can still rely on elections to decide who should govern. And if you pull that pillar of our democracy out, the edifice comes crumbling down. And what's left other than violence? If you can't trust the ballot box to resolve differences, then what is left but violence? It's what led to January 6th and what may lead to further violence. And Joy, I think you're absolutely right about the subtext here, which is if the Republicans lose elections, it's because of people who are black and brown and don't look like white America. And therefore, it's inherently invalid and illegitimate because I think the subtext is they feel that minorities should not be participating if they're going to be decisive in an election. I think when you look at those who attacked the Capitol that day with their Confederate flags and their Auschwitz T-shirts, there's no separating this insurrection from the white nationalist motivation behind it.